My guest today is actress Jane Kaczmarek, who stars in the short film And Now I Lay Me Down, is on the festival circuit after premiering at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival to rave reviews, and now appearing at this year's HollyShorts Film Festival. Now, she's best known for her role as Lois on television's award-winning Malcolm in the Middle, for which she received 7 consecutive Emmy nominations, as well as several nominations for Golden Globe and SAG Awards, and she also received the Television Critics Award 2 years running, the only woman to be so honored. Now, Jane's television career began with iconic series roles in St. Elsewhere, The Paper Chase, and Hill Street Blues, and she continues her role of Judge Constance Harm on The Simpsons and starred in features including Pleasantville, Chips, The Chamber, and Falling in Love alongside Robert DeNiro and Meryl Streep. But she is also a Broadway star, having appeared on both on and off Broadway productions, a resume that is as long as her television and film career. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's welcome the star of film, television, and Broadway, Jane Kaczmarek, to the show. Welcome, Jane.
Well, gosh, Ward, if I want to just do only interviews with you, if you're going to give an intro like that about me. That was wonderful to hear. This is your life.
And I didn't even go through the rest of it because I know that you are a lover of classical music. I know that you have your own charity in which you raised money for other children's charities. So you're very busy.
Yes. I had a charity called Clothes Off Our Back that I was doing when Malcolm was in its hilt. And I don't know if it's because I'm Polish and from Milwaukee and you don't waste anything. But, when you're nominated for all those things, you get so much swag. And I just thought, I'm never going to wear all these sunglasses. I'm never going to wear these beautiful gowns again. So I started an online auction where we sold celebrity clothes. We called it Celebrity Finery. For the red carpet, and people would bid online, and we made millions of dollars, and it all went to children's charities. And then I had the great opportunity to go to India and Africa several times and visit these hospitals and the children that were being helped by this money, and that was a life-changing experience. I always think of this when you see these commercials where it's like, is your mattress number correct? And, when you see children sleeping on pieces of cardboard, you think, lady, sleep on a mattress. Don't worry about your mattress number. Going to, those nations and seeing kids in those situations really was just one of the greatest blessings of becoming a celebrity, because there's a wonderful actor named Mike Farrell who was on MASH forever. And when Malcolm started up, he said, you have a certain currency now as a celebrity, and how you spend that currency is completely up to you. You can use it to get great basketball tickets and go to openings, or you can, spend that currency helping, working in areas that you believe need attention. And I'm always grateful to him for putting that bug in my head, because helping children and visiting those nations was a major, major turning point in my life.
That is some very, very wise words. And I bet it was extremely rewarding going to India and the other countries, Africa, and seeing where all the money that you raised, what it went to, and actually seeing it change lives.
So, I would always say that there is no designer gown or limousine or award that you get that feels anywhere near the feeling you get when you help a child in need. And that's not just corny. It really is. And seeing the doctors who are helping them and these surgeries and it changed my life as much as it changed those children. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, I always remember the words of Stella Adler, and the great acting coach, and she would tell all of her students, go experience life and see what is out in our world, because you'll be able to take that education, that knowledge, and put it in to yourself. So when a particular role comes your way, you can draw from that. And I'm sure that
Now,
those
did
experiences allows
you?
you to do
It's
that.
interesting. That's interesting. You know Stella Adler. Did you study acting at one time, or how do you know that? That's very. How do you
I
know that?
what I have studied a little bit of Stella. I have her book. I've taken about 5 acting lessons in my life, but I had the opportunity to interview at least that I can count 5 actors who actually were trained personally by Stella. And there is just this difference between those actors and then the actors of today. And they even carry themselves differently, even when they speak, when they act, when they talk, even in a normal conversation. There is just this little thing that just stands out because well, they were personally trained by her and just became a sponge and soaked it all in.
Yeah, she was something. She would probably be arrested today with half of the stuff she did. But everything is so politically correct. I had a friend who studied with her, and they were doing, oh, I don't know, some Tennessee Williams play, and she said to this student, "No, no, that's not lust. This is lust." And she opened her shirt. you know that's the way the great ones taught. There was no then somebody going to the head of the school and complaining that they were harmed by or triggered by something she did. Acting is getting down to the real nitty gritty of stuff, and that's very different than a way I think society, well, in acting training is. Also, that was theater. I went to Yale School of Drama, and learning a technique of acting, and what you're talking about is technique. It's that if there's something in the text that isn't completely grabbing you, find something in your life that you can make a sense memory, a substitution with. Now, of course, Stanislavski said by the end of your life, you don't need to make substitutions. All you need to use are the given circumstances, meaning whatever is happening in the script when you're my age and have had children and no loss and no love, all you have to do is think about what's in that script and it'll come out of you. If you've
Yeah.
lived a good life where you've challenged yourself. Those people you're talking about, the Stella actors, also, there's just a curiosity about life that I find is, well, we could talk about this forever. I was teaching some students last summer and working on monologues, and I was just so surprised that they hadn't read the play from which the monologue came. Um, there was no internet when I was a kid. You'd go to the library. You looked at plays, and then you'd read them and hopefully find a monologue in there of something you could do. But it came from reading the play and thinking, "Oh my gosh, Linda Lohman in Death of a Salesman. That's a character I want to do." Now there are available online, monologues for young, and they click in, they memorize them. Some students remember, and then they don't really know how to break it into beats or to know what that life is. And when you say to them, "Did you read the play?" "No, I meant to." I think, how could you? I'm surprised that they're not so curious. They're not on fire to know, who is this character? Where did this character come from? What's happening in the play? What can I learn that I can deepen this monologue I'm doing? Um, that
No,
was
you're right. No, you're 110% correct because that was the thing that I noticed. Because when I talked to these 5 actors that literally knew Stella, I mean, we're talking some actors that knew Stella personally and standing in the same room with not only Stella, but Marlon Brando. And
yeah. Oh,
there,
those. Oh,
you're right. They are so curious about life and everything about it, but there's just that element within their acting that elevates them above everybody else. And when I see the young actors coming up today, it's kind of like what you just said. "Oh no, I haven't even read it yet." I'm like, why don't you have, where's your hunger? Is your hunger for the craft or is your hunger just for the stardom?
yeah. We always say this, is that you have to want to act more than you want to be an actor. And acting is storytelling. And, you know, you think of like the Trojan Women, you know, all those great Greek plays, the Trojan Women especially. I've been in 3 productions of the Trojan Women when I was a kid um, and when I was a young woman. But there was a great summer theater program, a summer theater called Williamstown, which is now kind of having some hard times. But I was a young actor, a non-equity actor, and there was Nikos Sakaropoulos was the man who ran Williamstown, and he would take a handful of acting students up there for the summer, and we would just be the Trojan women, you know, lying around. My city is in ashes, but we would get to watch. There was a wonderful stage actress named Maria Tucci. She was married to Robert Gottlieb, the great editor of Robert Caro books, and she was Andromache. And lying on the stage, looking up at her, Andromache, she had been married to Hector in the plays, and the Greeks are going to take her son Astyanax and throw him off the building, because the idea was you have to kill the children of the rulers so they don't rise up and try to get your kingdom back. Watching this actress every night say goodbye to her child who was about to be killed, you know, it was one of the greatest acting lessons of my life, being a young nobody watching great acting. And you learn so much from that. And I often find kids now aren't really, some are, and I shouldn't, I can generalize, but aren't really want to go through kind of the apprenticeship of just watching, and we're learning from watching great actors. So it's such a different time. Oh, it's such a different time.
A very big difference in time. But I've got to ask you, what interested you in the role of Celia Dalby in as the aging actress and Now I Lay Me Down?
It was so funny. My agent sent it to me, and she said, "There's interest in you for this movie." And, you know, after Malcolm and a divorce, I had 3 little kids. My daughter Frances was a year and a half when we started Malcolm. I was pregnant with my son George the first season of Malcolm. I was pregnant with my daughter Mary Louise on the 3rd season of Malcolm. So when Malcolm ended, all I wanted to do is stay home with those kids. I wanted to be a mom. I mean, the only 2 things I ever wanted in my life, to be an actress and to be a mom. And now I had, you know, 3 kids within 5 years, and I had a wonderful time on Malcolm, and I was in my late 40s. And I wanted to just raise those kids. So I really put my career on hold, on the back burner. My husband wanted a divorce. He went on. He's in love with Hollywood, which is his path. And I really became a member of, I live in Pasadena, and that community is so rich with opportunity to be part of a community. That you mentioned, the classical music, the Pasadena Conservatory of Music. I work with the public schools, the Pasadena Educational Foundation, working with acting with public school kids, and also the great Pasadena Playhouse, which we won the Tony Award 2 years ago for regional theater. Pasadena offered just an amazing community for me to have a family, to raise my children in the schools. My kids could walk to school, and to be part of Pasadena. And I would do a play every now and then, but I really stepped back from show business. And then this movie came along, and it was so funny. It was so well written. You know, they always say, if it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage. And Ronnie DeMuth, who wrote it, I mean, she had such a wit about her, sly things. And I just, I loved that character. And as I continued reading, there was the humor in it, but also the real pathos I knew of time passing. And you just can't believe how it that keeps going, and your life keeps going. And one day, you know, you're sitting in a bubble bath, as I am in the movie. And my agent says he didn't get the part. They actually went with, even though you were the right age for the character, they went with someone younger, you know. And I think the humiliations that Celia is going through in a career. Her husband's married a younger woman, and my husband has remarried a very nice woman. but a lot younger than I am.
You know,
I
I
could
love
I
the
could
bathroom.
relate to that.
Yeah, I love the bathroom scene because of the fact is not only was it funny, but it was funny in the sense that casting directors tell everyone what age range that they want in an actor, but then they don't exactly tell you. So then they go, okay, we're looking for someone and they like we want someone who is 60. But are they going to choose a young 60 or an old 60? So when I saw the scene, I went, yeah, these are the casting directors. They tell you one thing, but they're actually choosing someone of the same age, but they look
I
15 years younger.
Yeah, it's a it's an interest, but I do have to say, in the theater, there's still did a wonderful production of Long Day's Journey into Night with Alfred Molina, and in the theater, there's still a lot of good roles. Alfred Molina and I have done 5 plays together, and he lives in Pasadena or in that environment, and theater doesn't get anywhere near the recognition that television and screen does, but uh, Fred and I had a wonderful, wonderful time with me playing characters my own age. So on theater, you can still do it, I think.
Yeah, I
But the
like
movie was
Alfred. Yeah, I like Alfred Molina because um, I was disappointed when because he was in the series that had one season, Three Pines, and they
yes,
didn't.
yes,
Yeah, and they didn't
Louise
renew
Penny,
it. And I thought, why? I was wanting more of it because I know with Louise Tenney, there's 18 books. They could have had a very
right,
long
right.
series.
Yes, she's an amazing writer. She's a wonderful writer, and Fred was happy doing them. It was a tough role. I mean, it's not a real funny role, but he is now in Albuquerque. He's on the board with me at the Pasadena Conservatory of Music. Excuse me, at the Pasadena Playhouse. Um, and he's in Albuquerque for the year doing a show called Burros. And I said, oh, like donkeys? Burros? Burros. I think of New Mexico and donkeys. He said, no, burros, like the 5 boroughs of New York. The Triborough Bridge. There's Staten Island, Manhattan, the Bronx, that kind of boroughs. I'm not quite sure why they're filming it in Albuquerque, but
It's
that's
the
what Fred's up
tax
to
write
now.
off or
It's a big
the
show though,
tax
but
credits. Yeah, the tax credits in New Mexico were
there's a
pretty good. Well, let me ask you
talk
this.
to Bryan Cranston at Breaking Bad. Yeah.
That oh yeah, exactly. Now, let me ask you this because is aging in Hollywood as bad as they say or are there still plenty of roles for women, let's say over the age of 39?
I'm not really in Hollywood anymore. I have to say, um, I have no social media, which really helps in uh, anxiety, I think, and envy. I remember back in the 80s, a friend of mine, when People, oh God, when People magazine came out, I mean, nobody even, People magazine was like, oh my God, look at this. You turn the page and a friend said, I'm not going to read People magazine anymore. It just breeds discontent. And I've always remembered she said that about People magazine. And that should be all over social media. Warning, the Surgeon General warns this can breed discontent. I don't really know what anybody's doing or anybody's up to. So when something like Celia Dalvey shows up, I think, oh, good, something's out there that's right for me. And um, as long as I'm making my health insurance in SAG, I'm pretty happy just living my life doing other things.
It's funny because when I looked at the role of Celia and I literally loved the decor of the house. I love the way she dressed. And I kept thinking, okay, if this was actually filmed in the 1940s, who would be the one playing Celia? I mean, it could be um, Betty Davis,
Joan Crawford.
Joan. Yeah, Joan Crawford was my first choice. You know, And,
She was a little too mean. I mean, John Crawford was, you know, who I would love to have seen was Rosalind Russell. Because Rosalind Russell had just such a great sense of humor about her. I love Rosalind Russell.
well,
Or
you
having watched Terms of Endearment last night, uh, Shirley MacLaine is fantastic in that part.
oh,
But where this is,
she would have the wit.
yeah, you know, this is
Yeah.
funny though, is that things that I grew up on, realizing that now I'm so much older, like All in the Family. You know, you think of Edith Bunker, and realizing, you know, uh, Jean Stapleton was, she's probably in her late 40s, early 50s. I'm way older than that now. People looked a lot older. There's a famous play, and then they made a movie of it, of Come Back Little Sheba, a William Inge play. And Shirley Booth was very famous for having played this part. And Shirley Booth then went on to, you know, Hazel fan. You know, she was a housekeeper on a television show, Mr. B, Mr. B. But she was always played, Lola, the character in that play, was always played like an old woman. Burt Lancaster and Shirley Booth played in the movie. And she comes across as very old. And if you really track it, the story is that they had been lovers in college. She got pregnant. He has to drop out of medical school and he becomes a dentist. He becomes something much less. Then it turns out she loses the baby. So they got married for, you know, and they take a boarder into the house, a young woman, um, or a man who Lola says, "Oh my gosh, she's the same age I was when you and I met." And this is a college girl, which means that Lola, the old lady in this play and movie, is in the movie like 36, 38. She's under 40. Now, if you know the movie I'm talking about, Come Back Little Sheba, look at Shirley Booth. And they've got her looking like she's 60 years old. I know people looked older. You know, you look at photographs and you think, oh my God, my grandmother was only 50 in that picture and she looks so old. But uh, generally, actresses who are looking older, who are older, look a lot better, I think, than they did 50 years ago with the Joan, you know, when they were still trying to be movie stars.
Yeah.
You know,
And most definitely. It's amazing how times have changed. But this character, Celia, I mean, she was not only fighting the aging process, but also the way Hollywood treats some of its aging stars. But she did have a bit of an entitlement attitude because of her past star power and accomplishments. I mean, I'm sure it's very difficult when the phone stops ringing for those who want it to continue to ring, because I bet the age gap or the acting gap is probably wider for actresses than it is for actors.
I was such an actress in spite of myself, though. I have to say, that phone would ring and it would be my agent, and I'd say, and she'd say, I say, if you got me another job, don't. I don't want to work. I want to take the summer and be with my kids. She'd say, in fact, I was with Malcolm in the Middle. I I I mean, I had to audition for it, but I turned down the audition repeatedly because it had taken me a long time to have my first child, Francis, and I anticipated with IVF there was a lot of technical stuff going on in those, you know, and I thought I was going to have another year off to have my second baby, and I didn't want to mess around with it by being on a TV show, and that was Malcolm in the Middle, and she really made me get off that couch and go and audition.
Yeah, but that must be a
And I
big
mean, Malcolm.
but that must be a very big blessing knowing that the phone always rings. Even if you're not interested in doing a part at the moment, it's still ringing.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I have uh, now have a different agent. I've really had a different, you know, time and place. But yes, but you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I used to have there was a wonderful a band I loved when I was young called the Loving Spoonful, and John Sebastian was they were so popular. I mean, they were at Woodstock. They were a wonderful, wonderful group. And I remember reading an article, probably in People magazine, where John Sebastian said, "You wake up one morning and you cannot believe how incredibly unpopular you've become." And I cut it out. Because I think for rock stars or people who are bands who get on a stage and there are, throngs of screaming fans, um, that must be very difficult when suddenly no one's buying your albums. Um, you can see pretty quickly, I think, in the music business, whether
Well,
you're
and
still.
you're right because I interview so many top recording artists, and the big difference is if they even have the thought of like, I would love to take a year off, and you do, your chances of coming back to the same success you had before could be extremely tough in today's time, especially in countries the worst. Pop seems to be dying. Of course, most people think rock is dead, but everybody wants to go see the most iconic bands still today. I mean, everybody is still brokenhearted that Aerosmith retired, so but not everybody gets to that level. But with acting, I think sometimes it just depends on what level you're at in the career that you can take a year off, or you can actually choose your projects wisely and not have to go do 6 streaming movies in a year.
And you know you have to save your money and don't live um, above your means. I again, having Polish parents, I was very grateful for being raised um, they were very resourceful. I can fix anything. I can fix your sump pump. I can fix your toilet. I can fix anything. And I don't spend a lot of money on stuff. I don't know. I travel. I really enjoy traveling. But um, um, I say I was very lucky, and I saved a lot of money during those very um, uh, years of abundanza of abundance. So
And very wise, because I know a lot of stars that think the money will always be there, and some of them learn very quickly or later in life that they end up with nothing. I think the athletes are probably the worst when it comes to spending habits because they think it'll always
how
be
could they
there.
get that
What?
kind of money? I I but I remember I was reading I think about Lisa Marie Presley, just this amazing debt, and you think, Jesus, your father was Elvis. How could you be in debt? Um,
Yeah,
I do my own bookkeeping. I do my own check. I have no money manager, or I do it all myself.
good for
So
you.
I know what I'm spending.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's
I'm
really
kind of a
that's the smart thing to do. Hey, I've got to
yeah.
ask you in this
I'm a
in this film in this short film. I love the Cheeto scene.
how funny. That was really uh, that when I and that's early in the script, but reading that was just I roared. To have a locked Cheetos cabinet, and that Maya, my assistant, when I say, Maya, give me the keys to the Cheeto cabinet, and she says, no, you told me not to. Maya, give me the key. That I've instructed her, no matter what I say, don't ever give me the keys to the Cheeto cabinet.
Yeah, and
And then
I could see Joan Collins playing that. I mean, not Joan Collins, Joan Crawford playing that scene because it's like, I mean,
yeah,
I would not even dare cross Joan Crawford. I mean, if she wants the key, she can have the key.
yeah, that was funny that she was saying. And those
But
things are pretty irresistible too. Those
yeah,
Cheetos,
the crunchy
the hard
ones.
ones. Boy, they're good. Those suckers are good.
Well, let me ask you this because
Um,
you have three kids, and there's that scene in the film where Celia is sitting in her daughter's room. She knew that she had put her career first, and she started realizing how sorry she was for not being totally present in her daughter's life. I mean, as an actor, how much does one sacrifice their normalcy because of the craft?
I never did. I have to say, Malcolm, we would start early in the morning on Malcolm, and I said very early on, I won't work past 7 o'clock at night. If you start at 6 in the morning, I'm going to be home at 7 to put my kids to bed. And they were very accommodating to me. They would also clump all my scenes together when filming. We were a single camera film shoot, so it took all day. But they would put all my scenes together so I wouldn't be waiting along for hours between scenes. Um, and that was just a real. I wanted to go home and yell at my real kids.
Well, how many
um,
pages?
I never.
I mean, how many
What?
pages did you film a day for Malcolm in the Middle?
About six. And they were, again, being single camera, that was a lot of, and it was a while ago. Lighting wasn't what lighting is now. You had to move all the equipment and relight, and because there were children on the set, they had to be filmed first because they could only work um, certain hours. And in the beginning, children, those kids were very young, and the amount of time they could work was so limited that we would film the children first, scenes with us, so you could get the kid off the clock. And then when they would film me in the scene, like with Dewey, since Dewey was now off the clock as a child, he couldn't work any more hours that day, they would bring in little people. So I was often doing scenes with, grown men with beards as Dewey, who were the height of Dewey. So they could make it work because of their size.
Wow, that
So
was some behind the
yeah,
scenes mystery there.
yeah, those could be kind of, because you're like, oh, scratching your back, and this guy's looking at you like, hey, baby, um, but I never, we did 7 years, and you have a hiatus of 3 months a year where you could do another project, and I never did. I turned down everything. I had a house in Connecticut, and I just went back with the kids to Connecticut for 3 months and just was a normal person. I was lucky. Malcolm came along. I was 41, I think, when I got Malcolm. They always say that there's a saying that celebrity, the age you are when celebrity really hits is the age you will stay at emotionally. So if you become a star at 10, often that's the emotional maturity you're going to have for the rest of your life, a 10-year-old, because you're expecting this. Brian and I were so aware to be in our 40s when Malcolm became such a huge hit. We'd been around the block. We knew what it was like to be guest stars in other people's shows where, you were like a piece of gum on the bottom of somebody's shoe. Nobody said hello. Nobody did anything. So Brian and I really went out of our way. Not out of our way. We were happy to make a point of always going and sitting with the guest stars at lunch. And we had hats made, Malcolm in the Middle hats, that they didn't have. I don't know why not, because they're so ubiquitous now. But we always gave a Malcolm in the Middle hat to a guest star we had and thanked him for joining us on the show. So that's the real blessing of finding this kind of celebrity currency. This in later in life. I I'm very lucky that I knew what I wanted out of life, and that was when I wasn't acting. I just wanted to be a mom, so I was very lucky to be able to do that.
That is that
And my
is
kids are
so yeah, because it's so weird because talking to you now and then looking at let's say and we'll just use People magazine as an example. From People magazine to the award shows to whatever is online or TMZ or whatever. I mean, there's that persona, but then that persona, that's just Hollywood. And here you are. I mean, you're a mom, you know, and you put your kids first. The phone's still ringing, the agent's still calling, but you're at the point to where you can pick and choose when, where, and what time or whatever, or just say no.
Yeah. Um, and again, I'm lucky because I mean, I saved a lot of money during that time. I mean, I made a wonderful, nothing like sports stars made, but um, um, I was very, very lucky for about that. And I think again, living in Pasadena, those years of my kids went to a school K through 12, so the moms that I met um, are very good friends. I mean, we grew our kids grew up together. Those moms, those friends are so important to me now. Our kid, I still have one in college. I have my daughter is a senior at Barnard in New York, and those moms, I can't tell you, we those memories are richer and really more sustainable and true than any memories from award shows. You know, um, that was just all.
Yeah, I mean,
It's fun. The first year, that was you can go back and you look at pictures or stuff, and you think, oh, the first year I went to the Emmys, it was terrible. Um, this publicist said, "We're about to go in," and she says, "Do you have your ticket?" I said, "Ticket? I didn't know I needed a ticket. I was nominated." Well, she didn't have a ticket, so nobody got me a ticket. And the show was starting, and we ran from door to door, and you trying to get me in. And the guards were like, "Yeah, what? Yeah, I got a woman here. She says she's nominated, for Best Actress in a Comedy. She doesn't have a ticket. Yeah, go to the next door." Well, by the time I got in, I was, just anxious and sweating and terrible. This award show it's agony. You sit through those, and then when your thing comes up, they put a camera. It's like they're taking I like blood or something. They're so close, and then you don't win, and you have to go, "Oh, I'm so happy for her," and you're thinking, "I want to go home. I just want to get in my pajamas and go home." Um, and then, of course, there's the governor's ball, but I still don't have a ticket, so I can't get into that. And I had this orange dress on. I said I felt like a salmon going upstream, through these crowds. Finally get into the governor's ball. My table is, other people are sitting at the table. So my agent and I go up these stairs to like where the people are who won on radio sweepstakes to go to the Emmys or something. There's like a little card table chair. And I sit down at this table. And these people said, "Hello, my name is Bob and I'm Kathy." I said, "Oh, hello, Bob. Hello, Kathy. I'm Jane and this is Dina." And hello, hello. And Bob says to me, "Are you in show business, Jane?" And I said, "I was nominated for Best Actress in a Comedy." I mean, it was just, but I'll tell you something. I went home and remember we had VCRs and we taped things, right? So I taped the Emmys from the night before. And now I'm watching it and they swoop in and I go, "Oh my God. Oh my God, look. Oh my God, I'm at the Emmys." And you're watching, "Oh, here you are again." And I'm so excited watching it on the video of it. And they show me over here and they show me over there and they show me. And at the end of watching that playback, I thought, "Oh my God, I was at the Emmys." And thought, this is why this is so pernicious, because in reality, it was one of the worst nights of my life. But when you see it on TV,
and that
it's
was and that
showtime.
well, yeah, because of the scene with Celia watching her win her award. I mean, I guess you were pulling from that experience in that scene.
Well, what I loved was when, before she jumps off the porch, she puts that dress back on that she had won the award in. and there's no way she can get it zipped up. I look at myself in some of them, and I can't believe how thin I was. I just can't believe how thin I was. Um, I think when you think that millions of people are going to see you on a red carpet, you say no to the chocolate cake. When you're living in Pasadena, and no one but your friends who love you are going to see you, you have seconds on the chocolate cake.
Well, I
So,
loved, like you had said in the beginning, the writing of the script of this short film was it was brilliant. It was perfect. And I love, like you had just alluded to, where she jumps off the balcony, and and I love writing like that, that they'll put something in the film early on, and then it becomes a passing thought, not realizing that that's actually going to be a major point of the plot towards the ending of the film. And Ronnie wrote just an amazing script. I mean, for you,
and
what's been
cast,
the audience's reaction to this film?
it's been wonderful. It's been really wonderful. I mean, I sent it to Linwood Boomer, who wrote Malcolm in the Middle, and to Bryan Cranston. And they both were like, oh my God, and just raved about Ronnie's writing and her ability to have that whole world in 17, however, 20 minutes, however long that film is. They covered
28.
a lot of what, oh my gosh. It's a world. It's more than a world. It's generations that she captured. But having those two guys, the mattress delivery men at the end, one giant guy, it was like Foghorn Leghorn. Remember that commercial, that cartoon we were little about that? I say, that giant white rooster and that little dog. That's what those two guys reminded me of, and they just handed me my shoes.
Yeah, and it was so funny
It
because
was
no, go ahead.
no, I there, and even when she goes off the roof and she's thinking, and you see her, she thinks about her mother and her mother's drinking and her anger at her mother when she was a little girl, and then you see, the beautiful scene with her. Well, that was the scene with her daughter, but then she's a grandmother and she's holding, and you think, oh, this is really getting nice. And then the next scene is you see her in bed with Ernesto, the gardener, which just completely cuts any sentimentality. You know, um,
It
I
did.
just marvel at her writing, her ability to do that. Because it has a real heart, but it's not a saccharine kind of thing. And then at the end, you know, she's seeing life through these new eyes, and the wonder of life, and touching a tree and how beautiful this all is. And picks that little daisy.
Yeah, I saw that,
Also,
but
something I didn't realize.
where in the world did Ronnie find? I'm gonna ask, because I'm talking to Ronnie uh, about this film as well. But where in the world did she find that house?
Oh, that's my house.
Are
But
for real?
but they filled it. But yeah. But they set decorate. They put stuff in it to look like Norma Desmond lived there. A lot of that.
The pink walls were awesome. I love the whole pink
That's my
green.
dining room. Oh, they put all the pink and green on the. Yes, they really played that up. That was hysterical. And the Japanese scene. That's my kitchen, but they changed all the upholstery. They changed up. But that shows you there's an incredible woman named Vanessa who was the set decorator. I mean, I couldn't believe it was my house when I walked in it. What they're able to do, and the scene in the bathtub. They brought in a clawfoot tub. That's my butler pantry. There's nothing in there but pots and pans. They brought in that tub and put candles everywhere. It was a miracle what they did with that. But the thing about Ronnie that was great with Ronnie too is that she the flowers. These floral arrangements in every room were stupendous, so gorgeous. And the flowers that Ernesto brings her when he says, I put some flowers in your room, I hope you like them. And it's the beginning of and she kind of looks at them and there's some little white daisies and she's kind of like, thanks, you know. But that final shot, it's the little white daisy.
That's right.
That, you know, oh, Ronnie, she's that woman should be writing. I'm so impressed with her.
Yeah. So was that red dresser actually yours?
The little red dresser where the
Yeah.
yeah.
I just thought that was I thought that was the most amazing piece of furniture.
Next time you come to LA, come to my house and you can see just what it really looks like. Because it's nowhere near as baroque as we made it.
You know, that's the greatest thing about filmmaking is you can turn, like you said, a pantry into a gorgeous looking bathroom with a tub, and no one is the wiser for the setup. But the whole decor thing, the colors, I mean, and like you said, in the kitchen scene, I mean, Celia literally dresses up and just to sit down to eat. And I thought this is
in that kimono.
Oh, it
and
was
then
off
that music, that wonderful little Japanese music. And Ernesto, the cinematographer too. It was, well, and I'll tell you what happened was Ronnie and I became friends. You know, she came over, do you have any questions about the script? I was like, no, I love this script. But we became friends, and she came to my house in Pasadena, and my daughter was, you know, everyone was gone. They were in college. And I said, would you like to film here in the house? And she, you know, it's like, and I realized I was so happy having a film crew in my house because I was so lonely. You know, and it was that rainy, it just rained and rained and rained. But you've got this terrific little crew. And with this Ernesto, the cinematographer was brilliant. Vanessa is doing such incredible things with the fabric and all this. It was so much fun having this crew in my house. And I only had to wake up at 5 a.m. and then walk across the yard up to my guest house, which is where hair and makeup was. And I didn't have to travel, you know, there was and then they all left. They don't let you film past 7 at night. The Pasadena warden was standing there. Get these trucks out of here at 7 o'clock. And I would just fall in bed and wake up in the morning and do it again. So it was a really happy experience.
Well, how many days did it take to film it?
Oh, 7, maybe a week. And then I had a friend, they were looking for a tennis court. And I had a friend, my friends, and I said, could we use your tennis court? They said, sure. So we filmed that on their tennis courts. But the costumes too. I mean, I'm blanking on the costume lady's name. Ernesto, everyone who worked for me, and those pink and green, you know, the fact that they all had matching costumes was such a little piece of brilliance because it told you so much about Celia that she would make her domestics wear matching outfits.
I noticed that, but what really made me laugh was that her assistant cringed at the fur coat.
And you know, right? And I said, oh, come on, it's already dead. What difference does it make? It's already dead. You know, make his white life worth something. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing about this whole script. Every little thing mattered, and every little thing just blossomed in every scene.
When Ernesto says, come on, Ernesto, what can I give you? Nothing. I'm a happy man. Oh, come on. And then he says, cash. Or I say cash. I think I say cash. And he says, here's my QR code. He gives her his QR code. So
and that's what made the writing so brilliant. But what I really started laughing where Celia offered the maid the golden frog. I'm like, you just gave a fur coat away, and here's this frog, and then the look on her face, and then that's when you go get the diamond necklace, and then I was just like,
It's worth a lot of money.
yeah, like you basically gave her permission to go sell it.
Yeah. Yes. Oh gosh, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah,
You
and
know, there was only one line, and I said to Ronnie, if we could go back, I would enunciate more clearly this line. I'm at the piano and I'm apologizing to my agent for being so harsh, and I say, you know, Hitler was a dropout of art school, talking about how I'm now being rejected. Hitler was kept from being creative, and I am now kept from being creative. And I said, Hitler was a dropout from art school. I'm not saying I get it, but, you know, as if I'm saying I can kind of understand why Hitler did what he did because he was kicked out of art school. You know? That line is just it's so horrible. Um, but
yeah,
I think
yeah,
it
because
might
when
be
I heard the
well known. I
line,
don't know.
because I watched the film more than once, and at the piano scene, I'm like, how could you I mean, to compare yourself to Hitler, but then make light of it. That was where the
Yeah, she
humor
says, no, no, no,
was.
no. Yeah, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. You know, yeah. Oh, you'll have a good time talking to Ronnie. Ronnie is also so beautiful. I mean, not that a writer director shouldn't be, but this woman is one heck of a knockout. Um, and she's terrific. She's just terrific. We had the most wonderful time, and I was really sorry to miss this. I think we screened yesterday or 2 days ago, the
Yes.
13th. And as I said, I came back for my 50th high school reunion here in Milwaukee, and that was a very important thing to do. Seeing people that it was wonderful. I wouldn't have missed it for anything.
Yeah, it
Although,
was so
man, I was sorry I didn't.
it was so funny
Sorry I had to
because
miss that screening.
I get this email, and I'm looking at it. I said, okay, so I just emailed Nadine back, and I go, I want to interview Jane, and but I had to put a line at the bottom of the email saying, I am a voting jury member of HollyShorts Film Festival. I mean,
Well, I didn't
because
even.
other than that, you would have just told me freaking no.
Oh no, I love this film, and I want Ronnie to get. I want this film to be seen by. I love this film. I'm so proud to be in it. I'm proud Ronnie asked me to do it. Um, oh no, and anyone who wants to talk about it, I'm more than happy to talk about it. Not, I'm thrilled to talk about it. But this 50th high school, and also my daughter in Chicago. I have a daughter who's a dancer in Chicago. She has a little dance company in Chicago, and she just moved into a bigger apartment. So I wanted to be a mom and help her get her new apartment set up a little bit. So Hollywood took a back seat for my 1974 um, high school class, and my firstborn, my baby Francis.
Well, that is well, and that's the way it should be. And I'm kind of wondering, is there any talk of maybe taking Celia Dalvey to maybe creating a streaming series? Because I would watch it.
Thank you. I would love something like that. You know, I'm a great. Oh, I love Hacks. Jean Smart and Hacks is just one of the. She is. She's just to eat with a spoon. I think Jean Smart is incredible, and I think there's room for kind of this age and what they're dealing with, and someone being a past celebrity. I'll tell you, I had a great opportunity this spring. I was invited to a Comic-Con in Paris. Do you know what those are when people go to convention centers and celebrities are there? Right? Well, I mean, the show has been off the air for almost 25 years, Malcolm in the Middle. I'm Jerry Lewis in Paris. I could not believe the reception in Paris. I had bodyguards. this convention center, people lined up from 10 in the morning till 7 at night for autographs, photos, weeping, weeping. Thank you for what you have done for France. I said, I would have thought maybe the Normandy invasion was a bigger thing for France. You know, it is such a hit still. And Malcolm in the Middle, you know, there's a real timelessness about that show. It's not, you can still watch it and it's the humor still there. And
Yeah.
it's, uh, and it's you know, it's been on since we stopped filming it from one network or streaming service. So there are kids who weren't even born when we were filming that who have seen every episode. And COVID, I knew a lot of people during COVID who said, my kid, all he watched was Malcolm in the Middle. So it's a timeless, that's a timeless show. And I would love to make Celia a timeless,
I'm gonna when I
what
talk to
happens.
yeah when I talk to Ronnie, I'm gonna tell her that that character needs to be created as a streaming series because you can just take it in so many different directions and it will be just every episode is just going to be hilarious. So I'm going to tell Ronnie to pursue that because you brought up Gene Smart and that's a perfect example. Then you had like Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, and the others in 80 for Brady. So there is a full blown market, and
Yeah.
because hey, look, Judi Dench is still acting.
Judi Dench. Oh my God. Oh, those people are so brilliant. I had the great luck of doing some of the great pieces from The Tempest. The Conservatory of Music was playing a piece of music, a suite from The Tempest, and they asked me to do a couple of the speeches from The Tempest. And I went online. I mean, this is something that didn't exist when I was a kid, and just found Judi Dench doing um, at the end that everything is going to dissolve and this garment of life, everything is just smoke, and just watching her, listening to her. I recorded her saying it. I would put my earbuds in. I would walk and listen to the brilliance, the beauty, the aspects of what that actress does. And I'm glad you mentioned her because she's just something else, you know.
Yeah.
She's just incredible.
Yeah, so I'm gonna nudge Ronnie because I would see this because you play this part so perfectly and brilliantly. I can see why everybody just loves this short film. I mean, the
Well, I just hope it makes me so thrilled to people seeing it. And I mean, really, I'm thinking now about what you could do. I mean, she could, after she eats you know, after she realizes that life is about simple things, you know, you can have her working like in a homeless shelter and being totally horrified about having to do the dishes, or I mean, there are
you
things that,
know,
I mean, this character could go in a million different ways.
one of my favorite shows as a kid was Green Acres.
Listen, I think Eddie Arnold, his his light comedy, the ability to do light comedy is so underrated. And Oliva was one of the great light comedians I think we ever had. And also her. Oh my God. Do you remember the painters who were always coming in through the closet doors? Everybody lived, hey mom, hey dad, she's not your mom. I love Green Acres.
Well,
And this goes full
Eddie
circle.
Arnold.
This
Well, it was like Eddie Arnold, and then you had Bob Newhart had that light touch with comedy.
the button down humor of Mr. Bob Newhart. Yeah. And he didn't even come from, he was an insurance sales, he was something else, right? It was interesting reading his obituary recently because he was like an office guy and he kind of did a funny routine with the other office guy. And then they made an album and it was like, you know, but, but Eddie Arnold is, um, we were talking about Come Back Little Sheba, which I encourage you to rent. It is such a brilliant play. And the Burt Lancaster character, it's a play and movie. Um, for Shirley Booth was one of only, I think, 2 actresses to ever win a Tony for the stage version and an Oscar for the movie version. I think Barbara Streisand did the same with Funny Girl. And you don't really think of Shirley Booth and Barbara Streisand in the same ball of wax. But in Come Back Little Sheba, the Burt Lancaster character, who's kind of married this woman, now, no baby, years have gone by, and he's an alcoholic. He's been in the program. He hasn't been drinking. And one night he just goes on a bender. And his sponsor in AA, who brings him home, is Eddie Arnold, playing a really serious character in Come Back Little Sheba. So Eddie Arnold, I say, is the linchpin of our conversation today, Ward.
Very, very, very much so. And do you have any new projects coming up that you're allowed to talk about?
Not that I'm allowed to talk about, but something very exciting is in the works.
Well, I can't wait. And when it all comes to pass, you're going to have to come back on and we'll talk about that.
Ward, the fact you know so many things that I find interesting, I would love to talk to you anytime.
Well, I appreciate that. I do my research, and to me, I still love the golden era of Hollywood because there's so much to dig up back then.
I do this program in New York at Symphony Space called Movie Night with Jane, and they asked me to bring in a favorite movie and talk to the audience first about it. And the first one I did was Splendor in the Grass, which is, Elia Kazan. William Inge wrote the screenplay, the same man who wrote Come Back Little Sheba. It's Warren Beatty's screen debut. Natalie Wood. Sandy Dennis is in it. It is the most perfect movie in my mind. And it is so sexy. It is so erotic. And there is never any nudity, sex, anything in it. And it's a time, I think it was made in 1961, and Kazan directing it, where you created this in these actors. You created this tension and sexual tension between them. And as I was in high school, and saw it on The Late Show. And I thought I was obsessed with this movie. And, in those days, that was it. You had to be home and watch a movie. There was no DVDs. There were no there was no way to watch it again. And there's a beautiful poem at the end of it. Well, the title is taken from a poem, and it's recited at the end. And I thought, what is this poem? And I asked my English teacher, no answer. I went to the library, no answer. I took the bus downtown to the Milwaukee Public Library, asked, the ready reference where these ladies, this is before Google, ladies sat there and they looked things up for you. Do you know what this line of poetry is from? Splendor in the Grass. Nobody knew. I guess this is what I'm talking about, curiosity. I don't remember how I finally did find out, but I remember the effort and passion I had about finding what that poem was. And it's from Wordsworth, Intimations of Immortality. Though nothing can bring back the hour, the glory of the flower, the splendor of the grass, we will grieve not, rather gain strength from what lies behind. And that probably really set me on as a teenager. These are the stories I want to tell and be involved in telling.
I love it, Jane. And I've had the most wonderful time with you today. And ladies and gentlemen, the short film, And Now I Lay Me Down, starring Jane Kaczmarek, written and directed by Ronnie DeMuth, tells the story of Celia Dalby, a wealthy, aging actress who attempts to have her perfect last day on Earth, but it doesn't go quite as planned. A brief examination of wealth and entitlement mixed with sorry and self-pity on a way to a newfound enlightenment. And let's don't forget the Cheetos. And Jane, I want to thank you. I want to thank you, Jane, for coming on to the show and just not only talking about the short film, but just talking about life and acting in general.
Life. That's where it all comes from, Ward, right? It all comes from that curiosity and just reaching and everything you can pull in you. So thank you. This has really been an incredible pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for watching. And I'll either see you at the movies or from the red carpet.